It was a perfect shape. It was shaped sort of well, like a pearl with a tail. It vanished in front of me, and before my eyes. It became a sort of ghost. I could see the water, the waves of the sea through it for one instant, and then it vanished.
I've seen something. Hundreds of pilots have seen something in the skies. We have dutifully reported these things. And we have to have 15 million witnesses before anybody's going to look into the problem seriously? Why, this is utterly fantastic. This is more fantastic than flying saucers or people from Venus or anything, as far as I'm concerned.
July the 24th, 1948, two experienced commercial pilots, Clarence Childs and John Whitehead, were flying at night over Alabama when they encountered what they described as a cigar-shaped object, perhaps 100 feet long, flying faster than any aircraft they had ever seen. It had, they said, 2 rows of windows, and they could see lights inside, and orange-red flames shooting out of the tail. Air Force investigators couldn't explain it.
It could not possibly fly unless it had an engine in it that was beyond anything anybody on Earth could make.
The Air Force investigators trusted the testimony of these experienced pilots and were forced to consider the incredible. Since 1948, there have been thousands of sightings by commercial and military flight crews.
March the 12th, 1977. I was flying a trip from San Francisco to Boston, non-stop in a DC-10.
It was an Airbus 320, and we had 24 passengers on board with very good condition. We were at 39,000 feet.
We were just north of Dallas, Fort Worth. It was a beautiful, clear night.
Out of nowhere, some lights appeared, looking over to the left of me, just to the north of me.
I noticed a red light of some kind to the distance off our port side, our right side.
And Larry says, well, keep an eye on it. He says, well, now it's coming at us.
And they began a turn from pointing directly at us in an echelon sort of a turn away.
It was not a plane, it was not a weather balloon. It was huge, absolutely huge. It was dark red color. And so this object began to become transparent and it disappeared. It was absolutely crazy. Crazy.
It just was gliding through the sky so quietly, and as it did so, it blotted out the stars behind it. It just reminded me of a submarine in the depths when it's quiet and just kind of motoring right on through, you know.
There were no wings, there were no windows, and it was cigar-shaped.
I saw what I saw, and this thing was not from here.
I watched this big, gigantic light go out behind our left wingtip, and then as the turn progressed, it disappeared in the distance off to the back at a very high rate of speed. I've flown all the jets. I flew in the war. I flew B-17s in the war. Everything. I've got over 30,000 hours of flight time and never had a sighting as that one. So it was once in a lifetime.
Any exhaust, propulsion, no rivet lines, a rounded edge about that size where it all came together. A true flying saucer.
Having those calls from a civilian around the town, I was convinced that was a UFO. So this is how we went into investigation.
As far as my experience is concerned, it can be American airplane, it can be Russian, it can be any technology to be like that, except some super technology, which is only UFO.
And I kind of jumped because at first I was thinking it was some kind of missile that was detonating, and the thing took off forward and it shot out to forward of the nose. I estimated about 2 or 3 miles ahead of the aircraft, and it made an instantaneous 90-degree right-angle turn, and it went vertical until it went up out of sight. And I sat there looking at it, and I didn't know what to think.
Maar dit stopte van de een op het andere moment. Het meest bizarre was dat het met een rotvaart voorbij kwam en stil stond. Vervolgens een paar seconden stil bleef staan. Toen van rechts naar links vloog. Weer stil bleef staan een paar seconden. En vervolgens links weg naar achter wegschoot. Verder konden we natuurlijk niet meer zien.
And it had strobe lights. It was stationary. And I was the first one to see it, simply because it was just right at our 12 o'clock position, so straight off the nose.
How many people were with you that day on that flight in the cockpit?
Just one pilot. He was pretty concerned because our trajectory we were going right at it.
At 35,000 feet, Goodnow and his pilot are heading right toward the object.
What was the distance between you and that object that you saw?
Within 20 miles.
Okay. So close enough to really
get
a
close enough
look.
that we were getting nervous.
Were any reports filed?
I did file something, never heard back. And I hear from other pilots that did the same thing, that's kind of a common theme. When you make these calls or you file these reports, there are never follow-ups.
Captain Terauchi describes the main craft as being twice the size of an American aircraft carrier.
Deviate from some object, requesting 240.
Spinner 1628 Heavy, deviation is approved as necessary for traffic.
It's quite a bit, like a formation.
Spinner 1628, sir, do you still have the traffic?
Disappeared, Spinner 1628.
Spinner 1628 Heavy, understand you do not see the traffic any longer?
Okay.
Moments later, an urgent message comes in from Elmendorf Air Force Base. The unidentified object now appears on their radar.
Yeah, that's 1-2 again. We have confirmed there is a flight size of 2 around your 1550 squawk. One primary return only. Okay, where is he following us? It looks like he is, yes. Okay.
I saw Ray turn around and talk to someone behind him while we were flying. Now, it wasn't worrying from the standpoint of flying, but it was unusual. And he was gesturing to something down below.
On nearing the object, a second identical shape appeared beyond the first. Both objects were of a flattened disc shape with a dark area to the right. They were brilliant yellow with light emanating from within, and I estimated them to be up to possibly a mile across.
Any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast that went right over the top of us.
UFO historian David Clark showed me the radar tracks of another sighting in 1991. The one we've highlighted was the unexplained object seen by an Alitalia pilot approaching Heathrow.
The pilot and the co-pilot saw this object like what they described as a cruise missile-shaped object zooming across in front of the cockpit, and the pilot immediately shouted out, look out," to his companion.
2 airline pilots traveling over Arizona claim they passed a UFO during recent flights. A Learjet pilot and an American Airlines pilot both saw the object late last month and radioed the regional air traffic controller here in Albuquerque.
Was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?
Number 71 Papa Golf, negative.
Okay. A UFO.
I gained an altitude of 3,900 meters. Then suddenly, I saw a ball in front of me, about 20 degrees to the right.
He watched the object for several seconds. Then, as it came toward him, Cherbakov tried to radio the base. The light from the UFO was blinding.
A sense of unexplainable fear came over me. On the back of my head, I began experiencing warmth. I felt as if someone was present and watching me. My movements were under control, controlled by someone other than me.
Cherbakov claims the reddish-yellow object started maneuvering around the aircraft. For several minutes, it kept up with the jet's airspeed and mimicked its movements. During that time, Cherbakov was unable to communicate with his base commander. The radio emitted only a squealing sound.
Pilot Cherbakov's description of the UFO moving relative to his own airplane is really quite common.
Dr. Richard Haynes has documented over 3,000 pilot sightings of UFOs.
I have thousands and thousands of cases of pilots in daylight encounters with structured objects in the sense of having three-dimensional mass, in the sense of having aerodynamic kinds of flight behavior relative to the aircraft. And so what he describes here fits in very nicely to what I have from hundreds of other pilots around the world.
And we felt just absolutely sort of frozen in the moment where we were encountering this technology that we thought, wow, we thought we were cool. We thought we had all the capability, but that thing is really, I want to fly that.